We are all back at school tonight. What an amazing space this is. So let's talk about school. I wonder how you all felt walking into this school building this evening. Did you feel success? Did you remember feeling popular among your peers? Do you remember a favourite teacher or a really funny moment? Or do you remember hurtful words, feelings of shame? Does your skin crawl a little bit as you think about itchy school uniform? Do you still feel the embarrassment of being picked last for a school team? Or cringe remembering having to change into your massive gym knickers? At my school they were brown. Somebody actually thought that was a good idea. But despite my massive brown gym knickers, I still loved school. And I also loved school when I taught in a secondary school for 10 years. I'll always remember Josh. Josh was 14 years old and he was in trouble all the time. He was challenging in every lesson, apart from mine. Josh didn't love learning French and he was never going to pass a GCSE. But in my lessons, he sat next to a boy called Ed who had Down syndrome. And throughout the lesson, Josh helped Ed. He helped him to write things down. He helped him to go up to the board and take part in my language games. And in those lessons, we discovered together that Josh had an incredible gift. It was a real talent. We discovered that Josh was amazing at helping others without patronising. And Josh finally felt empowered. And it was witnessing moments like this in secondary school that were really magical to me as a teacher. The real moments of powerful human connection and relationships. These things that cannot be measured. You'll never find them in a league table. But this is what brings the joy to me in schools, and it's why I love school. I learnt that Josh didn't need a head teacher's commendation. He didn't need a shiny certificate to go on his wall. My quiet gratitude and seeing Ed's enjoyment in lessons were enough for him. He was empowered. But these sort of moments didn't happen enough for my liking in secondary school. I still really regret that. I still feel a sense of real frustration because I had a conveyor belt of students to teach. 30 students out, 30 students in, and a very limited amount of time to teach them as much language as I could in order for them to pass a test. So 3 years in, I decided to devote all of my time outside of the classroom to taking my children, taking my students on school trips, getting them outside of the classroom. And I took them to France and to Spain and even to the Gambia, and we lived without electricity and water for a whole week and volunteered in a local primary school. And all of these students came back to my classroom standing slightly taller. Their linguistic skills had improved, but so much more importantly than that was that they felt empowered, they felt more self-confident, they had developed life skills over there. They had faced their fears and they had survived. And this is what was special to me about my secondary school teaching years. In 2013, I had my first daughter and I set up my own childcare business. I had gone from controlling a class of 30, or at times, a whole assembly room like this, to trying to control 3 toddlers in my conservatory and failing miserably. These toddlers, they came running into my house every day, ready to play, learn, discover. They demanded that I read them their favourite stories, play their favourite games, sing their favourite songs. It was utterly exhausting, but it was also magical. I experienced every day the magic of the human brain developing. Their imaginations would run wild, just in my back garden or under a sheet in my living room. And I discovered through those toddlers that I didn't actually need to teach them anything because they led their own learning. I had perfectly planned activities all laid out, and they were left desolate on my kitchen table because I thought my ideas were great, but they thought their ideas were much better. Effectively, I was under a dictatorship of toddlers. I always thought I would be really excited about my own children starting school. I loved my own school experience, and I also loved teaching in secondary school. I was so passionate about my profession. But in 2017, I had a niggly feeling for my just-turned 4-year-old that it wasn't the right decision. I didn't take the decision lightly. The fantastic school that I turned down that year was just across the road from my house, directly opposite my nursery business that I had grown. It was a lovely, neat little triangle. School, home, and the business. Surely that was living the dream. But by this point, I knew how children learnt best. I witnessed it every single day. The joy of child-led learning. And my 4-year-old was this small human, so creative, so curious. And I wasn't ready yet for her to be confined to the same 4 classroom walls. I wanted her to still be adventuring, exploring, discovering for herself. I was also looking at a much bigger picture. I was comparing the world that my education had really successfully prepared myself for around 20 years ago, and I was comparing that to the world that my child will be entering in around 2030. And these two worlds seemed incomprehensibly different. I entered my teaching profession, age 22, with a very basic Nokia mobile phone. I'm sure some of you remember them. 3 basic functions: texting, calling, and playing Snake. And I'm sure you might have had maths teachers who said to you, you have to be good at mental arithmetic because you won't always have a calculator in your back pocket. Well, we now have teenagers not only carrying a calculator around with them, but an entire computer. And they can get any information, any knowledge that they possibly want, like that. And they don't even have to type the questions. We all have Siri and Alexa at our beck and call. So my daughter is now 10. What's the world going to look like in another 10 years' time? What are we actually preparing our children for? So I turned down this school place and I went against the flow, this tidal wave of families walking past my door every single day to the local school. And people did wonder why. They thought I was slightly mad. But I wasn't just inspired by the wonderful late Sir Ken Robinson and the multitude of books that I was reading on brain and child development. Thankfully, I had a childcare client with exactly the same values and ideals for her daughter. So we started discussing what our dream education would look like for our children. And we went to Finland, the country renowned for topping the global education charts. And we visited schools over there. We spoke to school leaders, we spoke to teachers, parents, and the children themselves. And we came back buzzing with ideas and with our vision. We were also really inspired by home educators and the level of personalisation and autonomy, freedom, flexibility that they were giving their children. But we didn't just want to create something really special for our own children. We really wanted to be advocates for all children. And so we did it. In 2018, we opened our doors despite a myriad of unprecedented challenges. We opened our doors to a brand new model of primary education. It was a very, very difficult, very challenging experience, with inspections that felt more like interrogations and so many sleepless nights. But we grew really quickly, from 12 children to 35 children to 54 children in just a couple of years, and with a pandemic thrown in just to challenge us further. And we were contacted by families from abroad, from different countries, even different continents, families hearing about us and actually considering relocating to London to access our unique learning environment. Because we're created an environment where children do not learn formally until they are around 6 or 7 years old, as in Finland. Until then, it's about the power of play, pure child-led learning. And throughout the school, throughout our learning environment, our children are in mixed age groups. Because when in the real world do we actually only spend time with people our own age? And through these mixed age environments, I get many, many Josh and Ed moments, all the time, as part of our culture. We've created a learning environment where we don't need rewards, we don't need stickers, we don't need certificates. We want our children to be intrinsically motivated, not to work hard for a sticker, but to work hard for that feeling of accomplishment. And in our learning environments, there's lots of movement, because children aren't designed to sit still in chairs all day. So some children are sitting down, some are standing up, some are lying on the floor with a clipboard doing their work like that. Because we all learn all the time about our brains, about how unique our brains are, how we all think differently, and how that is a really important thing in society. Difference in my learning community is normal. Our motto is fail, learn, get better, because we want all of our children to understand that failure is a very positive thing. We all make mistakes, and if we're afraid of making mistakes, then we're never going to try anything new. We're often asked, so what happens next? Where do children go after us? And they go into mainstream schools, and they succeed. We are now just branching out into secondary education. I meet so many parents all the time. I meet parents who have that same niggly feeling that I had when their children turned 4. I meet parents who just want their child to carry on loving learning and being curious and creative. And then I meet parents who are trying to hold it all together. These parents tell me their stories of their children who have been struggling in a different school. The children who don't know why they don't fit in. And the children who may seem fine in school, but when they get home, they can be aggressive. They have their meltdowns because they've been holding it all in all day. These parents are so inspirational to me. These parents are warriors. They are fighting every single day in a very, very difficult system. So many forms, so many assessments, so many waiting lists. And I say to them, I assure them, your child does not need fixing. They just need a different environment. And this is when we really grasp the impact of what we have created. The leap of faith that we took 6 years ago is actually changing some lives. I would go as far as to say, possibly saving some lives. Because it's the impact of giving a child more space, more time, more freedom to be themselves. And to not push them through this conveyor belt, always wanting to get them through a curriculum to pass the test, and all that pressure. We take away that pressure. We give them the time. We take away the expectation. And we start to see the children grow. And we start to see them unveil again and be themselves. And it's really, really powerful. So let's imagine a world where this could all happen on a much larger scale. Because it is possible. We dream of a time when our school model is no longer seen as being alternative, but accessible to all children. Let's start the conversations. We're in a very exciting time in education. More change does need to happen in mainstream education for students to feel that empowerment and for their well-being. But change is happening. There are now over 81,000 home educators in the UK alone. There are vast global communities of world schoolers, unschoolers, homeschoolers, online schoolers. Let's get together and actually think about what we can create. What do we want education to look like going forward? Let's be the country that others visit to see how it's done. Other industries are having to diversify to meet the needs of a rapidly changing world. Let's not leave education, and most importantly, our children, behind.